Hello, I'm Pat Fish. I was recently approached by my alma mater, the University of California at Santa Barbara, to give a presentation about how women's tattoos and trends in tattoo imagery have evolved over my 30-year career in tattooing. What follows is audio recorded at the event, synchronized with the slides that I presented. Thanks for watching.
Pat Fish is an alumna of UCSB with BA degrees in studio art and film studies who graduated in 1975. She's been tattooing in her own studio in Santa Barbara for 30 years, and photos of her work have been widely published in magazines and books. She has worked at many tattoo conventions worldwide and has been an educator in her field on medical issues in the studio environment and on Celtic and Pictish art history. She is part of the first generation of women tattoo artists in America. When she started, there were less than 100 women tattooing in this country. She will speak about her experiences as an artist, a tattoo artist, and a woman in an occupation previously exclusively practiced by men, and show slides of her work to illustrate evolving trends in tattoos chosen by women over the span of her career.
Okay. The first slide we're going to show here, this is me in Scotland at the Aberlimno Stone. And just for thinking about choosing tattoo images, that's the stone pattern on my arm right here. And I thought it was out of an illuminated manuscript. I saw it and I loved it. And then years later, I'm getting ready to go to Scotland and I get this book on how to go to Scotland on $10 a day. And I open up and there in the frontispiece is that cross. And I realized that's where it came from. Now, I'm obsessed with the idea of using historical basis for the work that I do and trying to find old carvings and stones and all kinds of other things that I can bring forward and make them into tattoos. So that's an example of me. And now I'm a Celtic art specialist. So I've been doing this for 30 years. In the beginning, I didn't get to do very many Celtic designs, and there really wasn't anybody tattooing them, but the Celts and the Picts were tattooed people back in prehistory. So it was important to me to try to bring that tradition back alive. The person who taught me is Cliff Raven. I thought when I thought about this discussion that I was supposed to be talking maybe about how it was difficult for me to break into tattooing because there was almost no women doing it, and I would have to do terrible things. Well, I didn't really have to, because as it fell out, I found this wonderful man who was an older gay guy, and it was irrelevant that I was female. So it was never a problem for me. In fact, it just was something that it's just true about me that I'm female, and it just happened to be true about him that he was gay. In his world, in his time, it was an absolute that nobody spoke about him being gay. It would have been a real problem. So he and his mate were brothers. As far as anybody knew, they were Cliff and Bob Raven. They were really Cliff Ingram and Pierre Mitchell, but they made up a new last name, and everybody talked about them like they were brothers, and they lived together and the whole thing. They owned Sunset Strip Tattoo and a lot of other shops. And I was incredibly lucky that I met him after I'd done my art degree here at UCSB and took my art portfolio to him when I got my first tattoo and asked him if he would teach me, and he said yes. So that was a real good thing. He also did something amazing. The middle design there is a chrysanthemum that he drew, which is pretty much like a traditional Japanese style tattoo. On the right is his version of it that we would now call tribal. When he was at the end of his life, he told me that the biggest regret of his life was that he didn't think of the word tribal, because he invented that style, but he called it pre-technological black graphic. And it just didn't catch on. And then in 1991, Leo Zulueta came along with his 5 sheets of flash that had tribal designs, and bang, the world of tattooing was just turned on its head, and everybody wanted black graphic work. And we watched that happen, and just, oh man, just for the sake of that one concept that people felt like they were joining a tribe by getting this mark, it changed the world of tattooing enormously. I started in 1984, and I only knew one person who had a tattoo. In all the years when I went to UCSB, I never saw anybody on campus with a tattoo, except maybe somebody, a military guy, might have one left over. But it just was not even on my radar at all. Now I think I'd be hard-pressed to walk very far at all here without seeing a tattoo on somebody. So it's very, very different times. So what I want to discuss is how tattoos go in design trends. The old guys told me 30 years ago when I was learning that you'll see them come around. People want one thing for a long time, and then it'll come back around. So when I started, the most common tattoo that everybody got worldwide was kanji, things written in Japanese or Chinese, which astonished me because how do you really know that's what it is? I mean, I was working off of dictionaries. There was no Google image search. There was no way that I could get a large image of it. And if I did I really know that that's what it meant? And so I have to have it on my release form that if it's in a language that other than English, you take responsibility for what it supposedly means. I don't, because I don't want to tell somebody that it does. So I would copy them out of this little dictionary, little 1/4-inch things, and try to copy them as carefully as I could. But as you see on this, these are examples of ways that they might not really mean what you thought they meant. And the tattoo artist will just put them on there if they don't care. So that was the original thing, starting in the mid-'80s. Then it flipped over. So in the early '90s, it became suns. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted a sun. And the truth is, I did a sun on somebody's butt crack every single day for a decade. And that one on the left, that I've probably done a sun like that thousands of times. I had a big sign in the back end of my thing saying, when a baker does not complain when a muffin sells well, he bakes another dozen. Because I was learning my skills. I was developing the chops of being able to do what I do now by cranking out one after another of those same designs. And what I tried to do eventually was start putting in Celtic designs. So I started taking the same external idea of a black graphic sun, but saying, can't we stick something unique inside? Can we put in an astrological sign or some spirals or some kind of Celtic knotwork so that it's something that you can have that's a little more unique? But I did come to understand that it's like people who wear logo branded clothing. They want that same symbol because it makes them feel like they're part of that tribe that wears that clothing or that sport team or whatever it is. So that's what the sun started to represent to me, was that everybody in that time was looking to be part of that tribe of people with suns on them. Click. So this is on the front of my house. My house is the bungalow that Suns on Butt Cracks bought, because if I'd had just the money from that one design on that one body part, because lower back placement was where all women got their tattoos at the time, I would have had the money for the down payment on my house, which I now own in Santa Barbara. So after suns, along came stars. Now the one up there in the top right corner, that's a nautical star, but people here call it a NorCal star or whatever else. It's that 5-pointed star with the divisions between the white and black, or just red and black. So I started trying to get people to get something that was Celtic, but it was still a star. So I'm trying to put up all kinds of flash on my walls in my studio to say, here's a 5-pointed star. It's even better than that one that all your friends have. So in the beginning, I was maybe doing 5% of the tattoos I did were Celtic. But as I got more and more designs, and I could put them up on the wall and say, how about that, how about that? Then I started doing more and more every year. And that's an example of it. So these are other stars, wreath of victory around a star, a 5-pointed star with knotwork inside of it, or that really complex one up on the top left. You know, I'm just trying to take what is the common thing that people want and then try to make them think outside that preconception of what they can get and try to have them get something a little more original. But one of the things I won't do is portraits. Now, portraits became very popular when the TV shows hit. LA Ink, Miami Ink, all of those, because those people did such eerie photorealistic stuff that it was really impressive to people. Plus, it gives a great backstory when somebody comes in and they talk about their dead child or their grandfather, and so it becomes this big sob story that they can tell, and it makes good TV. I can't recognize people very well. I don't do that very well, and I certainly can't draw a portrait on paper that looks a whole lot like a person. It just isn't a skill that I have. So I admire those who can do it, but when that came up as a big trend, fortunately I began ramping up doing Celtic more and more because I couldn't even get close to it. I don't try to do portraits at all. So one of the things that I do a lot of is dedications and commemoratives. This is a couple that came to me. The one on the left is the first tattoo they came They're both medical people. He's an anesthesiologist, I think, and she's some kind of nurse. And they had a baby that only lived a couple of months. And it was born, and they knew it wasn't going to last. And so they had the tragedy of watching it live on life support for quite a while and then letting it pass. So they came out from Ohio, and right there on that really bold placement, they wanted to be able to reach out and touch his hand. So we did the handprint there and surrounded it with a ring of Celtic knotwork. They pretty much came out knowing that they wanted to do something as a memorial for their baby, but they didn't know what. And then we worked together to design that. Now the next one is the other side of their arms. And this is a pattern that we designed this year. They came out wanting to do yet another tattoo for Noah, the one who had died. And I found out, because they brought them with them, that they had 2 other children. And in the interim time when they sent me emails, they kept talking about how they wanted more of a memorial for Noah. They wanted to add to that. And I just kept telling them, you have 2 living children. Please do something for the living. If you need to, make it incorporate all 3 of them. But don't discount them. Don't make them not important, because they're with you. So we came up with this one. There's 2 boys and a girl. So, sorry, she was wearing all pink, and I said, what color would you like the cat to be for you? And she went, pink. You know, so how typical is that? So the boy, he picked blue. So those are the 2 living children, and the one on the top with the wing, that's the child that passed. So he's a boy, he's a dog, he's a boy, and he's got an angel wing on him. So this is a pattern originally in the Book of Kells that was 3 lions, and I adapted it, changed it around, made it into something that now, when they want to talk to people about their child that died, or they want to talk about their family, it gives them something that's a symbol for them to be able to show and relate. Another kind of people that I really enjoy working with are cancer survivors. So here's a woman who, at the very top of her Celtic knotwork cancer ribbon that I designed for her, that's her date where she was officially in remission, up there at the top of it. I really appreciate the fact that people, especially when a woman has gone through chemotherapy, radiation, and all of that stuff, they get to a point where they feel like they have surrendered their identity to these doctors who are just pushing them through all these systems, and they've just become a number or a body that's being dealt with. And there's a real thing that people say to me frequently, is that they feel like they want to reclaim their body as their own. That now they've been a good girl, they are healed, now they want to do something that's just for them, a choice that just they are making. And so a lot of people who have beat cancer are going to come in and try to get something that's going to be a symbol that now things are back to being they're in charge. I think this next lady came in because she had gotten a double mastectomy and replacement, and it just didn't look good at all. It was like she had a grapefruit on one side and a mango on the other. They were so not level. And the scars are horrific. I mean, they may look okay in clothing, but to have to live with that, to look at it, you know, it seems like they really have a sense that they didn't really survive. They're not a woman still. Part of their femininity, their beauty has been taken from them. So she came in and she just wanted 2 little posies, 2 little pink dots that would make it so that when she looked in the mirror naked, she still had some kind of nipple there. And I said, please let me do a blue butterfly next to them. So I did a monarch butterfly, but blue. And so that first one shows just on the left would be what I did, was just do the butterfly and a couple of flowers. I don't actually have a picture of that. This is the second session. She came back and said, you know what? Let's add some flowers. I love this. This is great. It hardly hurts at all, and I like this process. So you see through it, eventually she had a whole bra. She had a big bee. She had a bunch of different flowers. And I actually got a really poignant phone call from her daughter saying, you know what? You gave me back my mother. She was so sad, and she just didn't come back to us after all that chemo and everything. And by letting her not have to look at those scars anymore, now she's really her again. So it was wonderful for me to be able to be part of that process. When people contact me and they want to do something like this, I'm always kind of hesitant, and we meet first for a long session to talk about their expectations. What are they? Because I can't give them an areola repigmentation that looks like it. I'm just not skilled at that. Somebody else may be. So if they want art, then I'm willing to take on the challenge. This next gal decided not to do any kind of reconstruction, so she doesn't have any saline or silicone bags in there. She's just got a flat chest. So to give her the visual illusion of having breasts, we did 2 Celtic knots. So that's another way to go with this. That's all I can promise somebody, is that I can give them art instead of scars. And that's a good example of that. So one of the other things that I do like to do, if I'm going to do text, it would be names. So here we have an example of somebody who came in to get some dedications for her sons. The stuff in the center says, "My sons, my love." She had 2 sons and one passed away. So the one who died and the other one are both commemorated with those. And then she got a tree below to sort of indicate that's her family tree of all these things on her back, and then her husband's name. And actually yesterday she came back, she came from Canada, she came back again, and we did a butterfly on her lower leg. So she finally has one that she can see. It's not stuck away on her back, and it's just for her, and it's right here. I'm so proud of her. So, but now I'm going to say that for the last 5 years, if we're talking about trends, the trend has been words. So I know that if you think about what your friends have for tattoos, a great percentage of them are going to be words. This has not been true before this decade. If you got them, they were in the sense of the name of a beloved, a dedication, something like that. But the idea of getting a whole Bible passage, lyrics from a poem or a song or something like that, that is completely your generation, this college age generation. And unfortunately they last for 10 years, so it's going to go on for another 5. But that's what's happening right now. That's the current trend. And I tend to blame Angelina Jolie, because she got those, things in Buddhist script on her, and she got words, and then she got the coordinates for where her kids were born. She got a lot of text, and she looks great no matter what she has on her. And so all these people thought, well, I'll look like her. Well, so that gal showing it under her breast, there's going to be a time where that's covered up. I'm sorry, gravity will defy her. And that's in her own handwriting. It's really hard to read. She loved it. She wrote it on paper, and I copied it on her. But to me, that's just not the most effective tattoo, and it's certainly not the most beautiful you could choose. And the other one, there's a long thing. Okay, that's quite a few words, but at least it's not the Gettysburg Address, right? Or "Yea, though I walk through the valley of death," right? That kind of stuff, you see it as tattoos. I just don't think it ages well. So I tend to discourage it, even though that's the big trend. One of the ways that I do like to use words would be if, for instance, it's your Latin family motto when I do heraldry tattoos. This is 2 examples. The one, sans peur, that one is a Scottish badge. So the clans, instead of individual families having a family crest like the one on the right, a clan would have a badge, and they would have the motto inside of it. So in something like that, I think the word makes it clear what it is, that it's cluing you in with your heritage, in which case that's a great place, great way to use a word. So when I'm thinking about history and heritage, my own heritage is that I'm Clan Campbell of Argyll. This is the Campbell tartan. And what I really love to do is take things that exist in the old manuscripts and in standing stones and bring them forward into accessibility as tattoos. So the one at the top there, that's the Aberlemno stone. So that's this pattern that I have on my arm, and it's put inside of a ring that comes from another stone called the Maiden Stone. And that's the kind of work that I like to do the most, because it's the most challenging to me, and I feel like these things have stood the test of time. They've been around forever. These illuminated manuscripts, like the picture at the bottom there, that winged lion is probably the size of a quarter. The little tiny knot is maybe the size of a nickel in those books. And yet to do them as tattoos, I might have to do them this big, because that's so much detail. They were sitting there with single hair brushes, those monks that did those illuminated books. So now I'm going to introduce my cohort here, who's being my IT department. That's Colin Fraser. And there we are on holiday. And that's a standing stone in Aberlemno with his hand sticking out of it. And then we're at Iona up at the top. Or is it Lindisfarne?
Lindisfarne.
Lindisfarne, which is where the Book of Lindisfarne is from. And then down below it, that's Quinn Abbey in Ireland. So we travel around, and it's a wonderful thing. You can write it all off on taxes if you come back and you use the grave rubbings that I make or the photographs that I take of the places that have the artwork at them. The one on the left there is from a grave rubbing that I did in Killarney in Ireland. So that's me taking chalk and rubbing it across a grave and making a pattern of it, and then later on lifting that off and making it into a pattern that I can offer somebody as a tattoo. And the one on the right is one that's carved into a stone in another graveyard. So these are another way to take something out of an illuminated manuscript. That armband at the top, you can see that's the pattern that alternates yellow, orange, yellow all the way around that eagle in Duro.
Duro.
So this is the Book of Duro, and the eagle represents one of the evangelists. And then the page down below, that's what's called a carpet page. So this is a small paperback book in size, but they're made on vellum, and that one little tiny knot out of the center is reproduced 8 inches across on that person's arm. So it goes from being 1 inch to 8 inches just to be able to get the minimum and the detail of it. And here's another one. This is
Lindisfarne.
This is also Lindisfarne. This is these are illuminated letters. So there would be pages and pages that would be just unsealed hand that would be telling a gospel, but then they'd have pages like this that would just be just a few words highly illuminated. So there you can see those two little pieces. That triangle is taken out of the bottom of one of the letters, and then the band is just one tiny little piece of that repeating pattern running along the edge. And they are really minuscule and really hard to see. So we kind of blow them way up and kind of trace them out and then make a geometrically perfect version of that. Then another thing that it's possible to do is to make up patterns. So I take a silhouette and then fill it with knotwork. So that was a butterfly that I designed for one of my sisters, so that I just took the idea of that outside shape and filled it with knotwork. And then for the hummingbird, Colin helps me with some of the design work. He took some pieces of knotwork and just stuck them in. Okay, this looks like it would fit in the head. This might be okay in the body. Then I take it home and I suffer over it and figure out a way to make them all tie together so that they're one line making the entire pattern within that silhouette to make the bird. And then other things that I like to do is, for instance, because I'm Scottish, I get lots of Scottish people. So that's just a request for 3 thistles. And in order to do that and make it really cohesive, I've got that nice spiky wildness of the actual flowers, but then they come down to something that's nice and balanced that makes the base of it, and that's a Celtic knot. The other one is 2 Celtic hearts, one facing up and one going down, just to make it more interesting than just one solid pattern. That was for the lower back. And this is a good friend of mine who's a hairdresser, and when you think about placement in tattooing, it's very, very rare for women to want to get a forearm tattoo. I was tattooing professionally for 4 years before I started tattooing my forearms. It's a big step to be seen at all times with tattoos, and she knows for sure that she's going to be an artist and a hair colorist, so she's okay with being a trend setter. And that's the stone that pattern was taken from. That's called the Shandwick stone, and that pattern is represented in a circle that's down in the base of it. What I like to do these days the most is Celtic knotwork that covers whole sections of the body. So these are 2 examples. The arm on the side there, you can see those are 2 views of the same pattern, how it wraps around and fills the entire body part. And then that's the single biggest piece that I've done, is that guy's leg. Goes down from on top of his foot up onto his thigh. So that's all one contiguous knotwork, and it starts out with maybe just one piece of knotwork out of a illuminated manuscript or a piece of border on a page, and then we, using computer, which Colin does, kind of make it sort of fit the shape, and then I stick it on them with a stencil and tie it together. It's really complex, but it's really a good challenge, and I like to do it.
One thing about that, though, is that we've never had a woman request this kind of work. We've had a few sort of teases that, my wife is also going to get one, but not yet. It just...
Oh, we had a couple come in.
Just would love it,
2 years ago, we had a couple come in, and the guy got a full arm sleeve, and his wife was going to come back and see the Maori people. They do the big, thick thigh paella on the men that has little small white areas. The women's tattoo is the white areas black and all the rest open. So theirs looks like lace. The men's look like a giant black thing with small openings. So it's the reverse out. So I really wanted this couple who look a lot alike for her to have the same design but somehow reversed out. It would have been such a pair. I could have won prizes, but no, not yet. We're waiting. So we'd like to talk about placement, because that's another trend that if you're looking back 30 years ago when I started tattooing, women never show their tattoos. I mean, I have so many people that tell me, I couldn't believe it, I didn't find out until after she died that my mother had a tattoo, right? And they're finding out when she's in the mortuary. It was a deep, dark secret. Because if you think go back 50, 60 years, the only place you could get a tattoo was in a port city or near a military base, or if you lived somewhere like Ohio, maybe the circus came to town and you snuck in the little hut that the tattooed guy had after he was up on the 10-1 and he was being exhibited. He'd sit there in his little hut and do things. And maybe, if divorce wasn't an option, maybe if the wife had a little rose on her butt and nobody ever saw it but the husband, maybe that helped. Maybe it was good. And so people find out years later, and this might be the mother that would say, if you ever get a tattoo, I'm cutting you off. And then they find out after she's dead she had one all along. So this is something where times have totally changed. Now people get very visible tattoos with not very much consideration for judgment, but that's been a very recent change. One of the things people will talk about is the pain. If they don't have a tattoo, they're going to bring up the pain, and they're going to worry about getting a tattoo in a certain place that it's going to be more painful. The truth is, it's always a short amount of pain for a lifetime of pleasure. So you want to get it where you want to get it. The transitory moment of having it put there is nothing compared to the permanence of it being there forever. So the permanence is what you want to consider, not the pain. And also, we like to say that tattooing is jewelry that can never be lost or stolen. So you think about that when you're detailing yourself. So when we think about lower back tattoos, okay, now they all have unfortunate names. The tramp stamp name, when people started saying that was it. I mean, I did lower back tattoos almost exclusively on women for probably 15 years. And then the word tramp stamp hit. And that was it. I mean, people just kind of thought, oh, well, this is, what do you call it now? Slut shaming, right? Where somebody has something that they're flaunting, and now you're saying, well, she must be a tramp because she has that, or she has her California license plate, right? Don't you love that? Or butt hat, because it sticks out of your pants a little bit. Arschgeweih, which is the German for ass antler, because it's sticking out of your pants. So underneath those words, that's what I would have done for years and years and years, was something that was central, that kind of mimics French ladies' underwear, that kind of triangular shape. And I want to say that lovely girl is what everybody thinks they look like with a lower back tattoo. They think they're sassy like that. Not necessarily always that cute, but she wears it well. And I want to point out here that, okay, the one on the left, that's several designs put together. If you just have something small in the center, it begins to look awkward, like that tree is growing out of your butt crack. So maybe then you put the sun and the moon in there and you try to spread it out. But the one on the right, we like to think about how, small tattoo, make ass look big. Big tattoo, make ass look small. That lady's got a pretty big butt, and you are not thinking about, oh, big butt. You're thinking, great tattoo, right? So there's a point where sizing something in the placement becomes really crucial to making sure that it accentuates the body and makes somebody more proud of what they are living in. And here's a couple of other ladies. This is the typical thing. You stick something in the middle and then you add something, foliage, filigree, something or other coming out the sides of it. The other place that women like to put tattoos, who aren't the bold current youth, would be the upper back. And at some point I started just saying women like to hide their tattoos from themselves as well as everyone else, because they were all about getting it put where they couldn't physically see it themselves unless they did two mirrors, to be able to see behind them. And I don't personally understand that. I don't think you get your money's worth out of it when you do that. But if you don't want to be reminded of a choice and you're unsure of yourself and you're unsure about other people judging you, maybe that's a reason why you do that. And I just tell them, you'll be back for one you can see. And I hope that that's true. So here's another couple. These were gals that got the Flower of Life design. They were going into business together. They were going to use this as their logo. And so they both got that together as a symbol that they were going to succeed in this. And this is a beautiful pattern. And then here's some other gals, and they got something higher up. Now, this is a little bolder because you can actually dress to show it off. You can wear a tank top or something and show it, but it's still not visible to you. So the green one, I actually extended that just to the point where she can look down and see it a little bit. You know, it becomes a tease that they're going to have to get another one. A very common place now, especially for dedications, is the wrist. Really tiny things on the wrist. I think people think that it looks feminine and dainty, but the truth is it doesn't wear very well on the wrist. It starts to blur out pretty quickly, and it's hard to keep them looking sharp. So it's tough when they start out really small to keep them looking good. But it's very popular. So that's a place where, to me, it's difficult because it's in people's face all the time. So you get something that's a memorial for somebody, then when people ask about it, you're calling up that emotion. And it's very, very accessible to other people to say, wow, what does that mean? And then here you are talking about that dead person. It may not be something you want to think about all the time. And so it may be really crucial when you get it done, but it might not be something you want to have for the rest of your life, something that everybody brings up to you. So it's a questionable place to put something that's really public. Another great place is the ankle. Ankles are nice because you can cover them up in a job capacity if you need to. You can, I mean, women less than men. Men, you know, if they're showing leg, it's an unusual job. But I think that ankles are a great place to have a little bigger design than maybe somebody would put somewhere else, and they can be like a piece of jewelry. And this is one that's an old La Tene design. So this is a very, very old design from some metal work that I brought forward and brought it into the tattoo realm. So then, if we've gone through different kinds of trends and different kinds of styles, what's next? When I started tattooing, there was nobody doing Celtic tattoos, and certainly nobody doing Pictish. I didn't really know all that much about Pictish art, but I started out working with the Celtic stuff, and then more and more I really enjoyed going to Scotland and learning about the stones. So this is an example. The top one, you can see that pattern is on that stone. It's called a Z-Rod double disc, and people who are Scottish, this is one of the leftover patterns from hundreds of years ago from the Pictish people. So it's kind of neat to see that brought forward. The other one is a little mermaid that I photographed at Magel, which has a museum in Scotland that has a lot of these carvings. And this is what the people thought 100 years ago the Picts looked like. Because we know that the Pictish people fought the Romans off, and Rome never conquered Scotland. They built Hadrian's Wall and just stayed behind it. So they were these savages who fought naked. They were heavily tattooed, and their women fought naked next to them, which scared the Romans to death. So this is their visual of what they were saying. This is what they looked like up there in the wild Hibernia. These are some more of those patterns. That's that same double disc pattern. That guy, it's the front of his shin on his leg, and he has two sons, one of which we represented with the Ardros wolf, which is a Pictish stone. The other one, he wanted a bear for his little boy. There really isn't a Pictish bear that's as attractive as the wolf, so I used the silhouette of the California bear, because the kids are born in California anyway, and then I used a dot pattern to make it look like the wolf. And on the other side, nobody knows what that is. We think it's probably a dolphin. That's what you see when it's rolling through the waves. But it's called the Pictish swimming beast and swimming elephant. We're not sure what it's supposed to represent. This is the kind of patterns that are depicted in a lot of the stones outside of the figural stuff. They'll just run patterns of single, triple, and double spirals And so that's just an example on a woman that we wanted something that would just be in a real pale blue that would cover a lot of the surface and be more of a sculptural thing than figural. And this is the next person I'm going to introduce. This is Ben. He's going to stand up and wave hi. This is Ben yesterday when he got the next part of his tattoos done. So as you can see, we've over the last couple of years, we did those two sleeves. We started with the one on the right, which is a Pictish chemorphic pattern that we covered his arm with. And then last year, we added the spiral one and tried to balance it out with the same kind of weight of line, but a whole different feel. Then yesterday, the day before yesterday, we installed that chest piece. So the lavender is because it's the purple stencil that I lay it on with.
Yeah, it didn't come on.
So here I am hard at work. There I am in my studio with some people watching, and there's somebody getting something, and we're just giving you a visual of what it's like to actually get a tattoo. I set up my studio so that people can lean over that counter and see it. They're not breathing on you, but they're demystifying the process, because I think it's really good that it's very upfront, it's very open. There's not a whole lot of blood running down onto the floor. After 30 years, I'm pretty good at this, so it's not like you're screaming in pain. You just got to go to your happy place. And there's another person, there's a gal getting something, and
Moving on to the older gals.
yes. As you'll notice, this is a white-haired individual. This is not a college hottie. This is a woman of a certain age. I get a lot of professional people, a lot of medical people, and I do think that I get a lot of people that are older because I'm older, and they don't want to put up with going to a place where there's going to be headbanger music and maybe the sensibilities about hygiene and cross-contamination control are not even discussed. And I make a real point of talking about that, and I want people to know that I do everything I can to have everything be sterile and good for them. So I do get a lot of older women. So here's some examples of the older gals, and they are a good clientele for me, and I like it that I have a studio that they can feel comfortable coming to, and they're not mocked for what they're trying to do and not told that they shouldn't do it. So here's some more gals. This lady over here on the side with the monogram on the left, it was her 80th birthday, and she and her daughter both got tattooed together. So, and this gal with the yin yang said that she'd been drawing yin yangs on everything since she was a young girl and always wanted a tattoo. And at some point, what are you waiting for?
Her husband died.
Oh, her husband died,
Yeah.
and so it was okay. Now she could get one because now it was going to be a memorial to him. And this other gal, oh, that's the gal that came with my dad. Yeah, that gal came out. My dad went on a cruise ship and came to Santa Barbara. He's 85. And he brought her from the old folks' home where he lives in Arizona. And she said, well, I'm getting a tattoo if we're visiting your daughter. So there she is. The gal on the left there is a very religious woman who follows Bridget. And so that's a Bridget's cross from Ireland. And a lot of people get crosses. The one on the right has an English rose put into a cross. So I like very much to work with people so that they can have their ideas brought into something visual that they can express on themselves that's unique for them. And my last person I'm going to show is, I thought I should have a transgendered person in this slideshow since I was showing almost all women. And so this is Barry, who is also Natasha. And that's a design that his partner drew for him of a tentacled overlord on his shoulder, her shoulder. And then on the wrist is a transgender symbol that I worked some knot work and made it into a bracelet. So that's my slideshow. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.